Yorgos Lanthimos is a Greek director, writer, and film producer who specializes in psychological films, both narrative and experimental. His films are known for being surreal, challenging the sanity of the characters and, in turn, the audience. His take on horror is very unique as he relies on subtle hints that something is not right. He creates an atmosphere of horror through disturbing the audience rather than scaring them. His film follows the same formula, long and mundane, with the characters getting weirder as the film progresses. His endings are always shocking, exciting, and disturbing. His unique use of cinematography, set design, character direction, editing, and sound emphasize the horror of his films and help to create an abnormal atmosphere of his films. Cinematography and set design are very important tools used by Lanthimos in order to create his uneasy environments. For example, in this scene of The Killing of a Sacred Deer, shots are either very wide or very close. The wide shots in this scene are used to show the space the characters are in, a black tie event. Extras are dressed very formally and stand in a golden ballroom, sipping cocktails as they socialize. This type of setting is typically associated with wealth and power and establishes the success of the main character before we know anything about him. The wide shots are paired with close-up asymmetrical shots. These shots are framed in a way that cut the faces of the characters abnormally, adding tension to an otherwise mundane scene. Switching between the wide shot and the abnormal close-up feels very unnatural, giving the audience an unsettled feeling before any action begins in the film. Similarly, the wide shots are very deep, displaying the entire setting, and the close-ups are very shallow, with the background completely blurred out, emphasizing the faces of the characters. The extreme difference of depth of field of these shots accentuates the jarring, unsettling feeling the scene gives as it cuts between the wide and close shots. Wide shots are used in almost every scene of The Killing of a Sacred Deer. These are not only technically jarring, but serve to isolate the characters and make them appear smaller in their surroundings. This is important as it mimics the feeling of isolation the family in the film feels for one another, as well as amplifies their helplessness in their situation. They are often paired with very slow pans or dollies, creating the sense that the camera is an entity following the characters as they move throughout the story. Many of Lanthimos' films use minimal set design, placing emphasis on the characters in the scene and adding the surreal feeling created by the films. The lack of highly decorated sets is another technique used to isolate the characters, giving the scenes a surreal, dreamlike effect. The most jarring technique Lanthimos utilizes while directing is direction of actors. Lanthimos is a master of directing characters to act unnatural, creating intense, disturbing scenes. In this scene of Dogtooth, the character's dance disturbs the audience through its length and the movement of the characters. The shot of these girls dancing continues for a whole 3 minutes straight. Film audiences are adept to seeing frequent cuts, so the length of this scene alone is unnatural. On top of the length of the scene, the shot is incredibly wide, isolating the setting the characters are in. Finally, the movement of the characters is very unnatural. Most obviously, the girls' dance looks more like they are sick than dancing, which alone is very psychologically challenging to the audience. The blank stare of the guitarist adds to the unsettling feeling of the scene. Uncomfortable character positions and movement is frequently used throughout Dogtooth, a film about children who have been raised completely isolated from the world. It amplifies the horror of the film by showing how isolation can affect the cognitive development of a person. An important way Lanthimos isolates his characters and creates a surreal, disturbing environment in his films is by using little to no sound throughout the scenes. Typically, long scenes of emotionless dialogue are shown in their entirety, with no cuts or music to break them up. The dryness of the characters serves as the most immediate, disturbing, and unnatural aspect of his films. Characters often go on long rants, often about high stakes or bizarre topics, with no emotion at all. This is amplified by the lack of sound during these scenes. The lack of non-diegetic sound in his films is abnormal and gives the audience a sense that something is not right. In this scene from The Killing of a Sacred Deer, Martin blackmails this woman by threatening the safety of her family. Despite this being such an intense scene, neither of the characters show emotion in their voice. Furthermore, there is no sad or intense music playing in the background. The only sound other than their voices is the sound of Martin sloppily eating spaghetti, amplifying the disturbing nature of the scene.